Hi, my name's Andy Dawson. I'm the manager of Inspire Youth Arts. We're based in Mansfield at the Old Library and part of a larger organisation called Inspire Culture, Learning and Libraries. So we're a big cultural trust that formerly a lot of the parts of that were included in the county council, and now we're fully independent. I'd like to talk to you about the Able Orchestra project, why it's important, what we've achieved so far and what our plans are for the future. And I'm hoping that this will make you think of how, when you're developing your music and your career, what it's like for people who've got challenges or disabilities and how they might be involved. Maybe you've got some challenges or impairments that you're dealing with and the barriers that you face. And Able Orchestra has really been about trying to break down those barriers and create pathways for young people into the music industry, whether they want to be a content creator or a music producer or performer, or even a manager or a technician. Part of our aim with Able Orchestra is to try and make that possible. I'd firstly like to talk about the National Music Plan. So recently a new music plan was released for England. This is a kind of updated plan for education primarily, but it obviously affects most young people as their journey into music often starts in education. The National Plan for Music Education has a vision. It's got 3 aims and 5 strategic functions. The 3 aims are to support schools and other education settings to deliver high quality music education, support young people to develop their musical interests and talent, including into employment, and support all children and young people to engage in a range of musical opportunities in and out of school. Historically, I think particularly for disabled young people, all those things have not been necessarily available or visible. So high quality music education, for example, young people with disabilities are often not offered what I would term as high quality music education, in my opinion. They're often offered things like hand percussion, very basic kind of musical outputs, or sometimes musicians coming into an SEND, special educational needs and disability setting, and just playing music at them or for them, which is nice and fun, but is not really leading to any kind of creativity for the young people. Young people with disabilities, so nurturing their talent and looking to pathways into the music industry, again, few and far between. I'd like to kind of reflect on that with Able Orchestra, again, is that we are trying to create those pathways. So we have one musician, a woman called Jess Fisher. I'm hoping in this video there'll be a clip of Jess just talking about her experiences as a musician with an Able Orchestra. We met Jess when she was 15. She got cerebral palsy. She's a wheelchair user. Her own experience of music making was playing a tambourine, which for her is quite a trigger, really. She found it she was quite dismayed, and that was her musical offer. She's part of a musical family, but because of her disability, playing the tambourine was kind of the only option. So we've worked with Jess since she was 15. She's now 23, and she's now working fairly independently. She's using a new device called the Composer, which I'll talk about shortly, which is a brand new adaptive digital music device. And she's leading workshops, she's doing training, she's kind of an advocate for disabled young people to be involved in high quality music making. So her experience is a real case study for us, is how can we replicate her experience for other disabled young people. So you'll see an interview with Jess talking about her experience shortly.
This is really cool because it's sort of a new Able Orchestra performance. In the past we've been very traditional, whereas this takes a whole nother aspect because it's going to be very much very more immersive, and people are going to be able to walk around the space, and it's going to be quite dark. And then Beck and Ellie Mae are going to have the visual side of stuff. So hopefully this will feel like a much more involved piece. It's not just start to finish. There'll be a lot of different elements going on, and hopefully you'll feel that in the space, and you'll walk away amazed.
We're also working with a young man called Marshall Fairbrother. Marshall is 19, he's blind from birth. He's on a traineeship with us. He did a work placement for us for about a year. Marshall's really interested in music technology. He's a drummer, he plays guitar. He's been learning his craft in our recording studio. He's been doing podcasts, he's been planning projects, and we're about to deliver some projects for visually impaired young people and hearing impaired young people that Marshall's heavily involved in. It's worth discussing disabilities as such, the range of disabilities that young people are faced with in society. They often seem to be lumped into a kind of category of, somebody is disabled, whereas within that there could be people with learning disabilities, autism, sight impairments, sensory impairments, physical disabilities, learning difficulties, and many other conditions. And I think our job as musicians or music educators is to adapt what we do to remove barriers in order for those young people to take part on equal terms with everybody else. So Able Orchestra has worked very hard to do this over the past 10 years, working with mainstream orchestras. So we've collaborated with the BBC Concert Orchestra, the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and also the Halle, which is a major orchestra from Manchester, and recently Symphonia Viva, which is a kind of East Midlands based orchestra. So working with those orchestras in order that young people can work alongside professional musicians. But the main thing for us has been that we are creating music that the disabled young people are the kind of main drivers of the project. They are creating the content, and what we want is other musicians to respond. This can be quite challenging for orchestras and other players to respond to the needs and the kind of desires and the musical interests of disabled young people, but that's what Able Orchestra is about. So we've been doing this project for a number of years. We've just recently been awarded some Arts Council funding. This will allow us to develop the project further over the next 3 years, and our ambition is to create a sustainable kind of ensemble model that can exist beyond kind of just a kind of day-to-day project that it has been up to now. So our Arts Council funding for the next 3 years, what are our plans? We want to create a sustainable ensemble project that has a life beyond the current kind of model, which is project by project. We want to create a young leadership group, so the young people we've been working with for several years are now becoming quite skilled as musicians, and we want them to have much more of a role in the kind of leadership of Able Orchestra. So we're trying to assemble a group of possibly 6 what we describe as core players, core musicians, develop their music skills as a core ensemble, but also for them to have leadership role in Able Orchestra. And throughout 3 years we're going to kind of test out various bits of technology, test out kind of models of operating the orchestra. We're going to work in partnership with other organisations, which is really key, and we aim to provide Able Orchestra the kind of route into a long-term project that in many years to come hopefully will be a project of national significance. So we want to share the methodology of Able Orchestra nationally with organisations and other educators and the music industry generally, so that things can improve. If you look at the 2010 Equalities Act, you'll see that within there are people with what's called protected characteristics, and disability is one of those. I think there are 9 protected characteristics in the Equalities Act. You can look them up, 2010. And you look at the National Music Plan, where there's a key function around inclusion. So basically everything's fine. If you read that, you go, okay, the Equalities Act is there, it's based in law, the National Music Plan is there, it's very clear. But the reality for disabled young people and disabled people generally, in terms of music making and many other things, is not where it should be. So we all have a responsibility to improve matters, and we can do this in a number of ways. I talked about adapted kind of music technology. So within Able Orchestra, we have a device called Composer. The Composer is based on a wheelchair joystick. So some of the young people we work with are in electric wheelchairs. They operate those wheelchairs with a joystick, and some of them are quite adept at getting around the world, getting in through doors and into spaces, and they negotiate their world with this joystick. One of our lead musicians, a guy called Sai Tu, realised that if we could create a musical instrument that kind of mimicked the same kind of muscle memory that the wheelchair controller had, you could then create a musical instrument. So that was something that was developed over the last few years. Sai has then developed a company based around this Composer, and the company called Digit Music. They're online, you can see them and their kind of ambitions around adapted music technology, and again trying to break down barriers for disabled people to make music. But that project was born out of Able Orchestra. That company that is now emerging was born out of Able Orchestra. If Able Orchestra did not exist, that company would not exist, and this piece of kit would not exist. So from a very humble kind of project that we started, you've got something that is quite kind of world leading and is breaking down barriers and making music making much more accessible for a wide range of young people. It's worth bearing in mind, we are a small team of people based up in Mansfield, handful of people. We develop projects around music, around dance, around digital. So we're quite broad in the work that we deliver. Able Orchestra is just one of probably about 50 projects. So the challenge is that we can put enough work and effort into each of these projects to really fulfill their promise and give young people real opportunity and a voice. And that's why we've gone for this extra funding for Able Orchestra to make that happen. Underpinning all this, I think the question to ask is why? Why is this important? I think that's a question for you guys to think about. I've got my own views on why it's important. I think I've outlined what the barriers are. Sometimes we focus on what we do and when we do it and how many and that kind of things. And sometimes I think it's important to ask yourself why. And the kind of core values that operate that project, the kind of the need and desire to create pathways for young people, to give young people a real voice, a real sense of creativity. We believe that all young people can become great artists and can produce great art, and the only thing stands in the way are, could be barriers, could be funding, could be access to opportunity. Schools are less focused on kind of the arts these days. There's much more of a focus on kind of academic projects. These are all my opinions. Clearly, they're not kind of fully. I'm not underpinning these with kind of research documents, but that is my experience. So I've been working in the arts for 35 years with young people, and we've been probably focused on disability for at least the last 15, 20 years. And we've found a lot of organisations that we see and partner with are now beginning to see disability as a priority. But it slightly feels that it's because the funders are now, like the new music plan, for example, is demanding that of people. So each music hub, which is there's a set of music hubs across the country that are funded through government to deliver music education. These music hubs have to have a kind of head of inclusion, and that's a relatively new thing. where in our team there isn't a head of inclusion. We've all got that within our job. It's just a kind of a given that when we're doing our work, inclusion is at the core of everything. How can we make things inclusive? How can we seek out people also that aren't accessing our services? I referenced visually impaired and hearing impaired young people. It's taken me the best part of a year to find groups or individuals, sensory impaired young people, to work with them in the arts. Usually sensory impaired young people are in mainstream education and college. They're not necessarily at an SEND school, and it's just been very difficult to find them, to work with them. So I've been doing lots of kind of emails and research and contacts, trying to find, and now we've slowly beginning to work with these young people. And obviously, well, it's not obvious, but clearly the opportunities they've had so far to engage in high quality arts and music have been really limited. So we're trying to kind of trailblaze some work around that. And if we can do it, then it means everybody can do it. And the barriers that face either the organisation or the young people or the situations that we find ourselves in are, surmountable. We can do this. So that's a really key factor for us. Is nobody ever asked my team or me to make a focus of disability. It's something we chose to do. It's a really exciting thing as well. It's a really fantastic opportunity, a creative opportunity to work with disabled young people. And I would challenge you to think about that when you're developing your work. The young man that I talked about, Marshall, who's blind, who's part of our team, in my view, Marshall's blindness is kind of, in a way, a really unique thing, because he is really equipped, because he's got music skills, he's got the support from our team, he's really equipped to become, perhaps, a person of real significance that can be a leader in that field, because he's got that lived experience of disability, which he can bring to his job, to his work, and to his art, and to his music. That means that when you're working with other young people who are blind or partially sighted or sight impaired, his experience is real. And I think that's really important, because what we want to do is see more and more disabled people in the workforce, not just as participants. And if you look at, I think, sport as an example, with the Paralympic Games, the kind of profile that's been given, it's a really great step in the right direction, but it's still quite limited. And with the music and the arts, there's still a long way to go.
The project started, I was at the old library and I was asked by someone if I was willing to take part, and I said definitely, because working with musicians with disability or needing to include others is definitely something I'm into, and I've always advocated for wanting to make music as accessible as possible, so I definitely wanted to take part. And the concept of this project is to make an event available where musicians of varying abilities and or additional need requirements can come together and play music and have the confidence to play music without having the pressure of being in front of a massive audience. And I think the project really scales things to the needs of the musicians. I think it's really great that we can involve the orchestra players as well from Sinfonia Viva, and that's basically the concept of the project for me, is to open music up to a wider audience, really. I think these projects are majorly important because a lot of people may well not be like me, proactively looking for stuff to do. Music is a very open doorway. From my own personal experience, getting involved with Inspire Youth Arts was the best thing I've probably ever done for my career. I've had the ability to work with professional orchestra players. I've had the ability to work with professional sound engineers, music producers, to help compose and record a coherent body of work. So yeah, definitely, I really think it's been a good project.
So I'd just like to leave you just with a kind of challenge, really, is to think about inclusion and disability. What can you do in your work that makes the work more accessible? Is there anything barriers that you face that stop you from being a musician or getting into the industry? Because Able Orchestra we're trying to use it as a kind of conduit to create pathways that other people can learn from, so that young people can go from being, interested, to taking part, to enjoyment, to being passionate, to being expert, and then hopefully, if they wish, to be employed. Our view is that young people can go as far with us as they wish. For some young people, it's just having a bit of fun, engaging with the project is fine. But for other young people, having a career is where they want to be, and whether that pathway is through, higher and further and higher education into employment, or traineeships, or apprenticeships, or whatever that might be. That's what we're here to do. And every young person's got a different kind of level of interest and challenges and opportunities, and you have to treat everybody as an individual and remove whatever barriers are in their way, regardless of what's going on. It's quite a challenge, but it's absolutely filled with creativity and joy and satisfaction. It's one of the greatest privileges of my life to have worked in the arts for all these years and seen and known young people who've been able to fly creatively. It's something that has been the greatest thing that I've been part of. I've been really, really lucky to be able to do that. So I wish you all the best, and if you want to get in touch with me and ask some specific questions, or you want to come and see Able Orchestra in action, then please get in touch. Thank you.
Point to Fletch, and Fletch should make a noise. Very good demonstration, Fletch. And then I'd make a noise, and we went round like that, and it was very free flow, and we got some nice music going, and we've got a bit of a structure now for the performance.
So yeah, we basically started to get the kind of structure of the thing set up. So we've got a few parts. So the call and response part, that's kind of a really nice intro, and it's not exactly timed. It's like quite nice and free. We're going to then add some sound effects and things in around that and make it all beautiful. All right. Yeah. So what I think we should do as well, just so that we're not playing for too long, because we did go through it quite quickly yesterday. Sorry, we did take quite a while. Let's play the sections a little bit shorter this time, yeah? So we'll just slowly sort of move you into the next one. So the call and response bit, we'll just get into it quite quickly.
So the idea of this piece is that we're creating an immersive environment for the audience. So the piece is performed in the round, so the audience can move 360 degrees around the piece, and also be able to kind of look up close at what the performers are kind of controlling and actually doing throughout the piece. They are controlling both the audio and the visual, and the piece is inspired from Papplewick pumping station and the whole of the steam mechanisms that exist there. So the huge movements and the idea of also water being pumped through these kind of really vast pumping systems and the movement of the pistons. So that's why we have this kind of central area of an LED array that moves through the space, and then the performers are based at each end of that. So they're able to kind of push and pull both light and sound back and forth between those two performative groups.
Both Beck and I went over to Papplewick. They very kindly kind of pre-steamed it for us before an open day, so it meant that we were able to go in before the kind of general public were there and really get in and sample a lot of the sounds from the space, but also, you know, kind of take inspiration from the different types of movements there. Like as Beck mentioned, you've got these huge arms, they're absolutely massive kind of mechanisms, but then even down to the tiny little counters that are in there, and the kind of the array of different sounds that you get from that. It's been really interesting to play with, particularly in this kind of space. Again, in the round, working on a kind of spatial sort of sound setup.
The project started, I was at the old library and I was asked by someone if I was willing to take part. And I said definitely, because working with musicians with disability or needing to include others is definitely something I'm into, and I've always advocated for wanting to make music as accessible as possible, so I definitely wanted to take part. And the concept of this project is to make an event available where musicians of varying abilities and or additional need requirements can come together and play music and have the confidence to play music without having the pressure of being in front of a massive audience. And I think the project really scales things to the needs of the musicians. I think it's really great that we can involve the orchestra players as well from Sinfonia Viva, and yeah, that's basically the concept of the project for me, is to open music up to a wider audience, really. I think these projects are majorly important because a lot of people may well not be like me, proactively looking for stuff to do. Music is a very open doorway. From my own personal experience, getting involved with Inspire Youth Arts was the best thing I've probably ever done for my career. I've had the ability to work with professional orchestra players. I've had the ability to work with professional sound engineers, music producers, to help compose and record a coherent body of work. So yeah, definitely I really think it's been a good project.
We're serving the people that we're kind of aiming to serve, as in we're setting up a performance that is inclusive and is accessible, and it's got kind of that kind of sensory element to it. Just even this one, people being able to move around the space and find the area that they're comfortable in and kind of find the soundscape and the kind of lighting setup that works for them.
This is really cool because it's sort of a new Able Orchestra performance. In the past we've been very traditional, whereas this takes a whole nother aspect because it's going to be very more immersive, and people are going to be able to walk around the space, and it's going to be quite dark, and then Beck and Ellie Mae are going to have the visual side of stuff. So hopefully this will feel like a much more involved piece. It's not just start to finish, there'll be a lot of different elements going on, and hopefully you'll feel that in the space, and yeah, you'll walk away amazed.